Whoa.
Rolling right from everything we've already dug into about the Grinch 2018, let's dive even deeper and ride this wave straight into a full-blown, no-breaks, breathless, story-style voiceover that pulls you right into Whoville like you're standing there in the snow yourself. So picture this. In this animated reimagining of Dr. Seuss's classic tale, we follow the Grinch, a grumpy, isolated green creature who's holed himself up inside a cold, echoing cave carved into the side of Mount Crumpet. And he doesn't just dislike Christmas, he despises it with every fiber of his shaggy green being. Every carol, every twinkling light, every warm, fuzzy act of kindness sends him into spirals of irritation. But underneath that bitter sarcasm and oversized scowl lies a past that explains everything, a quiet loneliness born from being forgotten as a child during the holidays. That pain simmers beneath his snark, shaping his world into one long attempt to avoid the happiness he feels he'll never have. Meanwhile, down in the heart of Whoville, Christmas is more than a holiday. It's practically a lifestyle. The Whos go all out, decorating every inch of their town with lights so bright you think they were trying to signal outer space. The joy, the laughter, the sense of community. It's everything the Grinch thinks he's above, but secretly aches for. And then, as if destiny wants to stir things up, the mayor announces that this year's Christmas is going to be 3 times bigger than usual. 3 times bigger. And that right there is the last straw for the Grinch, the moment that pushes him from annoyed loner to full-on mastermind. He decides that if the Whos are going to triple their cheer, he's going to shut down Christmas once and for all by stealing every tree, every stocking, every crumb of every cookie. So he crafts this wild plan, building gadgets, rigging up inventions, and even forcing his loyal dog Max, sweet, overworked Max, into helping him prep for the grand heist. He even borrows a giant reindeer named Fred, who's more goofy than intimidating. And while the Grinch sharpens his schemes, on the other side of town, little Cindy Lou Who is cooking up a mission of her own. She's got one wish for Christmas, to make her hard-working mom's life easier, and to do that, she wants to meet Santa face to face and pitch her heartfelt plan. Her innocence and determination make her the emotional heartbeat of this whole story, the pure opposite of the Grinch's cold resistance. As Christmas Eve rolls in, the Grinch puts his plan into motion, dressed as a twisted green version of Santa. He slides into every home in Whoville, swiping decorations, presents, lights, feasts, you name it. And everything's going perfectly wrong until he runs into Cindy Lou, who mistakes him for the real Santa and speaks to him with so much sincerity that it hits him in a place he hasn't felt anything in years. After he escapes back up the mountain with the entire holiday stuffed in his sleigh, the Whos wake up to find their beloved Christmas stripped bare. But instead of collapsing into despair, they do the one thing the Grinch never expected. They gather together, hold hands, and sing. No gifts, no lights, no decorations, just love. Pure, undiluted joy that doesn't come from stuff, but from people. And that moment cracks something open inside the Grinch, something he's been protecting for far too long. He begins to understand what Christmas actually means, what he's been missing, what he pushed away out of fear and hurt. And with that, he does the unthinkable. He brings everything back, every last gift, every ornament, every wreath. And he doesn't just return the loot, he steps into Whoville himself. And when Cindy Lou invites him to dinner, when he sits at that table surrounded by warmth and kindness, his heart literally grows 3 sizes, breaking open in the best way possible. It's not just a redemption arc. It's a story about how isolation twists us, how kindness reaches us, how connection transforms us. The Grinch, 2018, is about how even the coldest hearts can thaw when someone sees them, when someone cares. It's about learning that joy grows when shared, that community heals, that belonging isn't earned, it's offered. And that is why this version of the story hits so hard. It turns a familiar holiday tale into a deeply human, emotional journey with humor, style, color, and heart. It's not just about a grumpy creature stealing Christmas. It's about a broken soul learning how to feel again. And rolling straight from that emotional shift in the Grinch's heart, The story doesn't slow down for a second because now we slide right into the faces, well, the voices, behind this world. The people who bring every character to life so vividly you forget you're watching animation and start feeling like you're listening in on real folks living their real lives up in the snow. This is where The Grinch 2018 shows just how much power a voice cast can have when every performance is dialed all the way in. The Grinch himself, the green, scheming, secretly heartbroken misfit at the center of everything, is voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch, and he brings this perfect mix of sarcasm, wounded vulnerability, and comedic timing that makes the character feel bigger, deeper, and funnier than ever. There's this sharpness to the way he talks, almost like he's constantly trying to sound tougher than he feels, and Cumberbatch slips in those little cracks where you can hear the loneliness bleeding through, and that's part of why the audience ends up rooting for him even when he's doing the absolute most trying to wreck Christmas. Then you've got little Cindy Lou Who, the tiny spark of kindness and determination, who basically becomes the emotional counterweight to the Grinch's bitterness. She's voiced by Cameron Seeley, and she plays Cindy Lou with that perfect kid energy, full of hope, sincerity, and just the right amount of stubbornness. When she talks, it doesn't feel like an adult trying to sound like a kid. It feels like a real little girl who genuinely believes the world can be better if she just tries hard enough. And that belief is what eventually shakes the Grinch's entire worldview. Max, the Grinch's loyal dog and the real MVP behind the scenes, doesn't speak, but his expressions, his reactions, the way he carries the emotional weight of dealing with the Grinch's antics, all of that is animated so well that you feel the character as if he were talking. Fred the reindeer, big, lovable, chaotic energy, adds another layer of warmth that breaks apart the Grinch's cold world piece by piece. Then there's Donna Lou Who, Cindy Lou's hard-working single mom, voiced by Rashida Jones, who brings this softness, this exhausted but loving tone, showing a parent doing everything she can while still trying to stay upbeat for her kids. Her presence grounds the story. She's the kind of character that makes you think of real-life moms who hustle nonstop without ever asking for applause. Bricklebaum, the overly enthusiastic, painfully friendly neighbor whose joy is basically nuclear-powered, is played by Kenan Thompson, and he steals every scene he's in. He's the guy who refuses to be brought down by anything, who loves Christmas so much he practically glows, and his energy bounces off the Grinch in the funniest ways. The mayor of Whoville also pops in with that over-the-top holiday hype, adding to the chaos the Grinch has to deal with. And weaving through all of it is the voice of Pharrell Williams as the narrator, the calm, smooth storyteller who gives the whole film that modern, cool, easy-flowing vibe. His voice doesn't just guide the story. It gives it rhythm, style, this almost musical narration that makes the whole world feel alive, like he's sitting around a fire telling you a story he's told 100 times but still loves to share. Put all of these performances together and you get a world that feels rich, real, and full of personality. Every voice adds another layer to the emotional punch and comedy, bringing Dr. Seuss's world into a new era with color, sound, and soul. This cast doesn't just act. They elevate the characters, shaping the movie into something that sticks with you long after the credits roll. Flowing right out of the energy of those incredible performances, the message wrapped inside The Grinch, 2018, hits even harder once you start peeling back the layers. Because this movie doesn't just tell a Christmas story, it digs into why people act the way they do, what hurt can turn a person into, and how love can pull someone back from the edges they didn't even realize they were standing on. And when you look at everything we've already covered, from the Grinch's lonely mountaintop world to the warmth of Whoville and the voices that bring it all to life, the themes start weaving together like one big emotional punchline you never saw coming. At the center of it all is this idea that loneliness changes people in ways we don't always recognize. The Grinch isn't born mean. He becomes mean because he grew up without anyone to share the season with. The movie shows how isolation can twist your view of the world, how being overlooked or forgotten can make you push everyone away before they have the chance to hurt you again. It's a reminder that sometimes the people who seem the coldest are the ones carrying the heaviest memories, and that bitterness is often just pain wearing a disguise. And right there alongside that is the theme that Christmas, real Christmas, is not about presents or lights or giant decorations that make your power bill cry. It's about connection, community, showing up for each other. Whoville doesn't fall apart when their gifts are stolen. They band together, proving that joy doesn't come from things, but from the people who stand beside you. That moment when the Who's start singing even after everything is gone, that's the emotional heartbeat of the film. The moment that flips the Grinch's world upside down and reveals the truth he's been hiding from his whole life. That love doesn't need to be earned, that belonging isn't conditional, and that kindness can break through even the thickest emotional walls. Another huge theme is redemption, not the flashy kind where someone becomes a hero overnight, but the quiet, vulnerable kind where a person finally realizes they want to change. The Grinch's transformation isn't magic, it's emotional honesty. It's him seeing something pure in Cindy Lou's request, something real in the Who's unity, something missing in his own life. His heart grows because he finally lets himself feel again, finally lets himself accept that maybe he deserves happiness too. Cindy Lou, on the other hand, brings in the theme of selflessness. This little kid doesn't want toys or gadgets or anything for herself. She wants to help her mom. She's thinking beyond her own world, beyond her own needs, showing that kindness isn't about grand gestures, but about caring enough to notice someone else's struggle. Her innocence becomes the counterweight to the Grinch's cynicism, proving that compassion can be just as powerful as pain. The movie also digs into the idea that family doesn't always look one specific way. Donna Lou, who represents the reality of single parents doing everything they can, and the warmth in her home shows that love can thrive even when life is busy and chaotic. Max the dog highlights loyalty and unconditional companionship. No judgment, no conditions, just love. Even Fred the reindeer and his little family reinforce the message that connection heals. Altogether, these themes form this rich emotional foundation. That empathy can change a life, that healing is possible, that the spirit of the holidays is rooted in togetherness, and that the smallest act of kindness can shift the entire story of someone who's been hurting for a long time. In the end, The Grinch 2018 isn't just about a green creature stealing Christmas. It's about a soul learning how to rejoin the world, about a community that chooses love over panic, and about a holiday that becomes meaningful not because of what you unwrap, but because of who you share it with. And building right on top of those themes, like stacking another emotional layer onto this story we've already been peeling apart, you start to realize that The Grinch 2018 isn't just about messages floating in the air. It's about how the relationships between these characters shift, stretch, collide, and eventually come together in ways that completely reshape the Grinch's entire worldview. These relationships are the engine of the whole movie, the thing that turns a simple Christmas tale into something personal, something alive. From the jump, the Grinch and Max have this dynamic that's half comedy, half heart, because Max isn't just a pet. He's the Grinch's whole support system, the only one who sticks around even when the Grinch is at his grumpiest. At first, the Grinch treats Max like an employee, barking orders, pretending he's too tough to care. But underneath that cold exterior, you see moments where the Grinch relies on Max more than he's willing to admit. As the movie unfolds, their relationship shifts from master and helper to something closer to family, the kind of bond where the Grinch finally starts showing appreciation, respect, and even a bit of vulnerability. It's subtle, but it's real. The Grinch begins softening long before he even realizes it. Then you've got the Grinch and Whoville, and oh man, that relationship is its own roller coaster. In the beginning, the Grinch wants nothing to do with them. Their joy annoys him. Their togetherness reminds him of everything he missed out on. And their celebrations feel like a direct attack on his peace. But the crazy part is, while he's up there on the mountain shrinking away from them, they're down there in the valley welcoming everyone, including him, without hesitation. The emotional tension comes from the fact that the Whos don't hate the Grinch. He thinks they do. He projects all his old hurt onto them, building this wall they never asked him to build. And when he steals their Christmas, and they still choose unity over anger, that old story he's been telling himself crumbles. Their relationship evolves from distant fear to eye-opening acceptance, turning the Grinch from an outsider by choice into a member of the community by invitation. But the relationship that changes everything, like literally flips the entire trajectory of the movie, is the one between the Grinch and Cindy Lou Who. At first glance, they couldn't be more different. He's bitter, sarcastic, guarded. She's hopeful, pure, and full of this unstoppable drive to help others. Their first real interaction is almost comedic, but underneath that is something deeper. Cindy Lou treats him with kindness he doesn't believe he deserves. She unknowingly becomes the crack in his armor, the moment that plants a seed he won't understand until much later. As the story moves along, she becomes the emotional mirror he's been avoiding. Her selflessness exposes how empty his cynicism really is. When she finally invites him into her home, that act of innocence and genuine warmth seals the transformation that's been building the whole film. Their relationship goes from accidental encounters to a symbolic bridge between who the Grinch was and who he's becoming. And then there's Cindy Lou and Donna Lou. a relationship that grounds the movie in real-life love. Through them, we see the kind of home that makes Cindy Lou the caring kid she is. Donna is overworked, but never unloving, stressed, but never too busy to show her kids they matter. Their bond is the emotional blueprint that Cindy Lou unconsciously offers to the Grinch, a model of what family is supposed to feel like. Even the side characters like Bricklebaum and Fred the Reindeer play their part in reshaping the Grinch's relationships. Bricklebaum's endless cheer and unshakable friendliness chip away at the Grinch's assumptions about others. Fred and his little reindeer family show the Grinch what loyalty and connection look like in the simplest, purest form. Every interaction adds a drop to this growing pool inside the Grinch's heart, slowly melting the ice he's been holding on to. By the time everything converges, Cindy Lou's kindness, the Who's unity, Max's loyalty, Bricklebaum's joy, the Grinch doesn't just change because he feels guilty. He changes because these relationships finally show him what he's been missing. They don't force him to fit in. They invite him in. And he accepts because, for the first time, he believes he belongs. The evolution of these relationships is what makes the story hit so hard. A lonely creature reconnecting with a world he once rejected. A little girl unknowingly healing someone with her kindness. A town welcoming back someone who tried to tear their joy apart, not with anger, but with love. It's messy, emotional, and beautifully human. The very thing that turns this animated Christmas movie into something unforgettable. Sliding naturally from how those relationships shift and reshape the whole emotional core of the story, the real magic of The Grinch, 2018, comes from how the film handles character development. Slow, steady, layered, like the kind of transformation that doesn't happen with one big moment, but through 100 little cracks forming in a wall someone spent their whole life building. And when you look at the Grinch through that lens, he becomes way more than a green grump on a mountain. He becomes a fully fleshed out protagonist whose inner struggle is the real plot driving everything forward. What makes his arc so compelling is that the film doesn't rush it or treat him like a caricature. Instead, it gives you glimpses of what shaped him, showing how childhood loneliness carved deep grooves into his personality. You see it in the way he avoids people, the way he acts like joy is an attack, the way he tries so hard to look unfazed even when something inside him clearly stings. He's not evil, he's wounded, and that's what pulls viewers in. The recognition that even the most standoffish people usually have a story underneath their behavior, one they're trying desperately to hide. The film deliberately balances humor with vulnerability, letting you laugh at his over-the-top reactions while still feeling the rawness beneath them. Every snide comment, every grumpy complaint, every exaggerated eye roll becomes part of this emotional armor he crafted ages ago just to survive. And what's even more interesting is how his development happens in places he doesn't even notice. Max's loyalty chips at him. Cindy Lou's sincerity shakes him. The Who's unity shatters the narrative he's been clinging to for years. His development isn't a sudden explosion of holiday spirit. It's the slow thaw of a heart that has been frozen by neglect and self-preservation. And it's done with such subtlety that you start rooting for him long before he realizes he can change. What really sets the Grinch apart as a protagonist is how deeply human he feels despite being a green creature living in a cave with his dog. He represents something a lot of people relate to but don't talk about. Being on the outside looking in, convincing yourself you don't need anyone. Pretending being alone is a choice when deep down it hurts like hell. His bitterness is relatable. His sarcasm is familiar. His reluctance to trust is understandable. And when he finally lets the world back in, it resonates because it looks like real emotional growth, not a Christmas miracle slapped on at the end to wrap things up neatly. The movie lets him make mistakes, lets him be petty, lets him be dramatic, but also lets him soften, lets him listen, lets him feel. His most compelling trait isn't his grumpiness, it's the quiet, aching vulnerability hiding behind it, the part of him that responds to kindness even when he doesn't want it to. That tug of war inside him is what keeps viewers glued, waiting for the moment he finally breaks through his own defenses. And when that moment comes, not with flashy animation, but with a simple act of being welcomed into a home, it hits harder because you've seen every step that led him there. His development is powerful because it feels earned. His redemption is satisfying because it feels honest. And his journey from isolated misfit to someone who can finally give and receive love becomes the emotional spine of the entire film, turning The Grinch 2018 into not just a holiday story, but a character study wrapped in snow, humor, and heart. Carrying that momentum straight into the world you actually see on screen, the visual style and animation of The Grinch 2018 take everything we've talked about, the characters, the emotions, the themes, and wrap them in a world so vivid, so polished, so insanely detailed that it feels like you could reach out and scoop up a handful of Whoville snow with your bare hands. The movie isn't just animated, it's sculpted, crafted, with that signature illumination look that blends bright, playful designs with cinematic smoothness, giving every frame this vibrant energy that pulls you right into the middle of the story. What really stands out is how the entire visual world mirrors the Grinch's emotional journey without ever saying it out loud. Up on Mount Crumpet, everything feels cold, sharp, and lonely. The lighting is more muted, the colors lean into icy blues and grays, and the Grinch's cave is filled with odd angles and shadows that remind you exactly how isolated he's chosen to be. But every time the movie cuts to Whoville, it transforms into a visual feast. Warm lights glowing across soft curves, candy-colored buildings stacked in cozy clusters, and snow that somehow looks both cartoonish and hyper-real at the same time. It's like the animators built two worlds that perfectly reflect the distance between the Grinch and everyone else. And the level of detail is ridiculous in the best way possible. The fur on the Grinch moves with emotion. When he's annoyed, his eyebrows practically do half the acting. The snow reacts to footsteps, sleigh tracks, and falling decorations. Even something as simple as Max wagging his tail has this perfect weight and bounce that makes the whole world feel alive. The animation team didn't just create characters. They created physical textures, emotional environments, and visual rhythm. Speaking of rhythm, the cinematography is where this movie flexes harder than people expect from a holiday animation. The camera moves with purpose, sometimes gliding smoothly through Whoville like you're on a Christmas tour, Other times, zipping around during the Grinch's inventions and schemes like a wild, chaotic ride through his mischievous brain. There are sweeping aerial shots over snowy landscapes, intimate close-ups that make tiny character expressions feel massive, and wide, glowing panoramas of Whoville that look like someone hand-painted a living postcard. Every shot feels intentional, like the directors wanted the visuals to tell the story just as loudly as the dialogue. And the lighting? Pure storytelling. Whoville is bathed in golden warmth, like the whole town is held together by joy itself, while the Grinch's scenes start darker, harsher, but slowly soften as he begins to change. By the time you reach the end, even the air around him feels warmer, like the whole world has shifted with his heart. The animation style also leans heavily into expressive exaggeration, stretchy movements, comedic timing, bold silhouettes, yet it never feels childish. It's charming, stylish, and high quality, in a way that blends cartoon fun with cinematic polish. The Grinch's gadgets move with this smooth, mechanical charm. The sleigh scenes feel dynamic and intense. The holiday chaos is captured with bright, colorful clarity that makes every frame look like a holiday card exploding with life. Altogether, the visual style, animation quality, and cinematography work like a perfect trio. Bold color to capture wonder, fluid movement to capture emotion, and thoughtful framing to capture story. It's a world that feels magical without losing that grounded emotional punch. A place where the visuals aren't just pretty, they're part of the storytelling itself. And that's what makes The Grinch 2018 more than just another animated Christmas movie. It becomes an immersive experience where every frame, every texture, every light and shadow pulls you deeper into the heart of a story about loneliness, love, and the power of letting people back in. And as all those visuals, emotions, and character shifts blend together, there's one more force holding the entire experience steady in the background like an invisible heartbeat: the music. The soundtrack in The Grinch 2018 isn't just background noise, it's the soul of the film, the hidden pulse pushing every moment forward, shaping the mood before the characters ever open their mouths. The score was composed by Danny Elfman, a legend in the world of whimsical, emotional, slightly off-center movie music. And you can feel his fingerprints on every note. He brings that signature blend of magic and mischief he's famous for, weaving together sounds that are playful one second, sentimental the next, and then suddenly full of this grand holiday sparkle that makes you feel 5 years old again. What makes the soundtrack so impressive is how perfectly it mirrors the Grinch's emotional journey. In the early scenes, when he's stomping around his cave being peaked, grumpy, the music dips into those quirky, bouncy, slightly dramatic tones that almost tiptoe behind him like the score itself is raising an eyebrow. It matches his attitude, sarcastic, irritated, and over the top, without ever mocking him. Instead, it makes you lean in, letting you feel his world from the inside out. But the second the movie shifts to Whoville, the entire musical atmosphere changes. Suddenly, the score fills with warm bells, twinkling melodies, soft choral hums, and these rich, inviting themes that sound like every Christmas memory rolled into one. Elfman uses classic holiday instrumentation, sleigh bells, choirs, lush strings, but blends them with modern beats and rhythms to give the film that updated, fresh, illumination-style flavor. It's nostalgic, but it's also new. And of course, woven throughout the film is the modernized take on the iconic "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch," performed by Tyler, the Creator. That track alone deserves its own spotlight. Instead of trying to copy the old-school, deep-voiced version, Tyler brings this cool, swagger-heavy, beat-driven style that matches the film's tone perfectly: playful, a little mischievous, modern, and full of personality. It gives The Grinch this bold, contemporary edge that younger audiences instantly connect with, without losing the old-school fun adults remember. Tyler also worked with Danny Elfman to blend musical themes so the score and songs feel like they belong to the same world. You can hear hints of Elfman's orchestration sliding under Tyler's lyrics, forming a soundtrack that's unlike any previous Grinch adaptation. And the music doesn't just sit on top of the story, it pushes it. When the Grinch is plotting something ridiculous, the music becomes sneakier, tiptoeing right along with him. When Cindy Lou expresses her hopes, the score softens into these pure, gentle melodies that make her sincerity hit harder. When the Whos gather after losing all their Christmas decorations, Elfman elevates the moment with this warm, glowing choral arrangement that carries so much emotional weight without needing a single word spoken. The music becomes the emotional translator for the entire movie. It gives the audience permission to laugh, to feel, to lean into the moments that matter. It amplifies the comedy, deepens the loneliness, heightens the joy. Always one step ahead, always guiding the heart of the viewer. And by the finale, when the Grinch finally lets his guard down and joins the Whos, the music swells into this uplifting, triumphant celebration that feels like his entire emotional arc, wrapped into one soaring musical moment. It's the sound of walls coming down, of hearts opening up, of a story coming full circle. That's what makes the soundtrack so unforgettable. It doesn't just support the film, it becomes part of its personality, part of its message, part of what makes The Grinch 2018 feel both timeless and brand new at the same time. And with that soundtrack still echoing in the background, the next natural question is how the world reacted to this whole package. This blend of heart, humor, visuals, music, and character depth that reshaped a story everyone already thought they knew. And honestly, the reception of The Grinch 2018 is one of the most interesting parts of its legacy, because it didn't just slide quietly into the holiday rotation, it came in with a presence, stirring up conversations among critics, warming up families during the winter season, and slowly carving out its own space in the Christmas movie landscape. When the film first dropped, critics had mixed feelings, not because the movie lacked heart or style, but because anytime you touch a beloved classic, especially one with Dr. Seuss's name attached, you're stepping onto sacred ground. Some critics felt it played things safe, leaning more into sweetness and charm than sharp satire. Others praised it for exactly that reason, calling it a modernized, emotionally richer version that found a new angle instead of copying what came before. They pointed out the gorgeous animation, the vibrant energy, the comedic timing, and the surprisingly layered emotional backbone driving the Grinch's character arc. And while critics debated those details, audiences, completely different story. Families loved it, kids adored it, and the box office numbers weren't just good, They were massive, making it one of the highest-grossing Christmas movies ever made. People kept coming back to theaters because the film gave them something warm, something visually stunning, something funny, and something emotionally satisfying without being heavy. It struck that perfect balance of cozy and exciting, silly and sincere, the exact combo that turns a holiday movie into an annual tradition. Over time, the film started cementing itself in the seasonal watch list crowd. And here's the thing, maybe it didn't instantly become a classic in the same way the 1966 cartoon did. That one had decades to build its mythos. But The Grinch, 2018, absolutely became a modern holiday staple. Every December, it slides right back into trending categories, right back onto family screens, right back into the rotation with stories people rely on to feel that holiday magic. And this is where the movie's real impact shows. It didn't become a cult film because it wasn't niche or overlooked. It became something bigger, a new generation favorite. The type of movie kids today will grow up calling their Grinch, the version they associate with hot chocolate nights, decorated living rooms, and the comfort of watching something familiar as snow falls outside. It's got that rewatchable charm, the kind of energy that sneaks up on you. You watch it thinking it's just another animated adaptation, and suddenly you realize you're invested in this green creature's emotional recovery like he's a real friend. And that connection? That's why the movie stuck. So while critics were split, audiences carried it. They embraced its warmth, its humor, its polished animation, its modern twist on an old tale. And little by little, year after year, The Grinch 2018 slid into that sweet spot between beloved family movie and seasonal tradition. It might not have the vintage glow of the older versions, but it built its own lane, a bright, energetic, beautifully animated space that speaks directly to this generation while honoring the spirit of the original. In short, it may not have arrived as a classic, but it's well on its way to becoming one, not through hype or nostalgia, but through the simple fact that people keep returning to it, choosing it, loving it, and making it part of their holiday story. And honestly, that's the real measure of a Christmas film's legacy. Rolling right out of how the world embraced this movie, it only makes sense to pull back the curtain and look at how this whole thing was actually made. Because the production of The Grinch 2018 wasn't just a routine animation project. It was this carefully engineered, ridiculously detailed, massively collaborative process that took a simple holiday tale and rebuilt it with modern tools, fresh creative voices, and a whole lot of respect for what came before. And what's wild is that the more you dig into how it was created, the more you realize the movie feels the way it does, because every part of its production was designed to hit that emotional sweet spot between nostalgia and novelty. First off, the studio behind it, Illumination, was already on a roll with their giant hits. And they weren't just trying to rehash The Grinch for the sake of it. They knew they were stepping onto iconic territory, adapting the legendary Dr. Seuss story that's been part of people's childhoods for generations. So instead of leaning on chaos and slapstick like some of their other films, they switched gears and aimed for a softer, warmer tone. That alone makes this movie unique. It's Illumination, but with a completely different vibe, almost like a quiet confidence, as if they said, let's take our time, let's build this world right, And let's not rush anything just because it's animated. Directing-wise, you had a duo steering the ship, and that's important. Having two directors meant the film balanced different sensibilities, one focusing on emotional clarity, the other on rhythm and comedy, which is why the movie never tips too far in any single direction. Every joke, every silent moment, every emotional beat feels like it's been tuned, tested, refined. And at the center of everything was the source material, the original Dr. Seuss book. This tiny, compact story with so much heart. It doesn't even need 100 pages. Turning that into a feature-length film meant the team had to expand it without breaking it, stretch it without diluting it, and that's where the uniqueness of the creation really kicks in. They didn't want to copy the 1966 version, and they definitely didn't want to redo the 2000 live-action version. They wanted something entirely new, something faithful to the spirit, but not the style. That meant rethinking not just the Grinch, but Whoville itself. The animators treated Whoville like a living snow globe. Everything glowing, everything soft, everything round, everything warm, and the Grinch's lair like the opposite. Cold, spiky, mechanical, lonely. Those visual contrasts were baked in from the earliest concept art, shaping the movie's emotional structure long before dialogue or comedy even came into play. And then there's the Grinch himself. They redesigned him from scratch. Not too scary, not too goofy, not too monstrous. They wanted him readable, expressive, someone you can understand even before he talks. They built a face that could show frustration, sarcasm, guilt, surprise, and all the little eye movements that sell the idea that underneath that green fur is a person who's been carrying sadness for a long time. That level of nuance is something you don't always see in animated holiday films, and it's part of what makes this one stand out. What also makes the movie's creation unique is how much the team leaned into emotional logic rather than pure spectacle. They added backstory, but didn't drown the character in it. They expanded the world without over-explaining it. They built new character threads like Cindy Lou's mission for her mom that never overshadow the main story, but instead echo it, giving the narrative more depth without feeling forced. And all of that ties into why The Grinch 2018 feels so polished. The production wasn't about reinventing the wheel, it was about refining it, smoothing it, giving it shine, and making sure it rolled smoothly for a new generation. Every creative choice, directors, studio, adaptation style, character redesigns, emotional tone, was made to serve one purpose: reintroducing a classic story in a way that feels timeless but never old, fresh but never disrespectful. And that's the real magic behind its creation. It wasn't made just to exist. It was crafted to resonate, to live on, to become part of that yearly tradition where families gather together, press play, and let a green creature remind them what the season is really about. And sliding right from the behind-the-scenes magic into the movie's bigger picture, you start to see exactly why The Grinch 2018 hits the way it does, and also where it stumbles a bit. Because every film, no matter how polished, carries its own blend of strengths and weak spots. What's cool is that this one stands out for reasons people don't always expect, and the stuff it falls short on is just as interesting, because it all ties into how the movie chose to reinterpret a story the whole world already knew by heart. One of its biggest strengths is the emotional clarity that runs through every frame. Unlike the louder, more chaotic holiday movies that try to cram in a million jokes a minute, this one breathes. It lets small moments land. It lets looks, gestures, pauses, and quiet scenes actually mean something. And that ends up making the Grinch himself way more relatable. Instead of painting him as this unhinged, bitter monster, the film shows him as someone wounded, someone lonely, someone who built emotional armor and pretended it was personality. That grounded interpretation is a huge part of why many viewers connected with him so deeply, because the movie speaks to that part of all of us that's been left out, hurt, or forgotten at some point. Another strength, and it's impossible not to feel this, is the visual world building. Whoville practically glows off the screen. It looks soft, warm, rich, like a place built from pure holiday energy. And the Grinch's cave, cold, echoing, jagged, but still somehow charming in that, yeah, I've been alone too long kind of way. That visual contrast does a ton of emotional storytelling without saying a word. Add the expressive animation, the cozy lighting, the tiny details, the snow powder in buildings, the softness of the fur, the way lights blur in the background, and suddenly you've got a holiday world that feels alive, like you could walk into it. The soundtrack is another win. The score adds soul. The modernized songs add personality. And the whole audio landscape is crafted to make Whoville feel like a place overflowing with joy, and the Grinch feel like someone who hasn't let himself hear that joy in years. It's subtle, but it hits. And of course, there's the voice acting. Benedict Cumberbatch gives the Grinch a tone that's sharp but vulnerable, sarcastic but tired, prickly but oddly gentle. He never goes over the top. He plays the character like a real person instead of a comic villain, and that absolutely elevates the whole film. But then, looking at the weaknesses, the main critique people throw at this movie is its safety. It doesn't take big risks. It stays calm, polished, warm. It doesn't aim for insane comedy like the Lorax, or the surreal charm of the '66 original, or the weird, wild, almost operatic energy of the 2000 live-action version. It plays things pretty straightforward. For some people, that's a strength. Finally, a Grinch movie without chaos. But for others, it makes the film feel a bit too gentle, a little predictable, maybe even a little too smooth around the edges. There's also the pacing. While most viewers find it cozy, others think it can move too slowly, especially for younger kids used to faster, more explosive animation styles. The film doesn't rely on big comedic set pieces or massive emotional plot twists. It's more controlled, more soft-spoken, and depending on who's watching, that can either feel refreshing or underwhelming. Some folks wanted more bite from the Grinch himself, more menace, more mischief, more of that chaotic streak the character had in earlier versions. This Grinch is less threatening, more awkward, and while that makes him relatable, it also makes him feel a bit less iconic to fans who grew up on the older portrayals. But here's what really makes The Grinch 2018 stand out from similar films. It chooses heart over hype. It's a holiday movie that doesn't feel the need to shout. It doesn't overload itself with pop culture gags or forced moral lessons. It's confident in being warm, gentle, and deeply human. And ironically, That calm approach is what helps it stick, because when the Grinch's heart finally grows, the moment feels earned, personal, and unbelievably real. So yeah, the movie isn't perfect. It's softer, simpler, more polished than some fans expected. But that's exactly what gives it its own lane, its own flavor. Instead of trying to top the previous adaptations, it quietly becomes its own version. A modern, cozy, emotionally grounded take that families return to not because it's wild or flashy, but because it wraps you up like a blanket and reminds you why the story mattered in the first place. That's the blend of strengths and weaknesses that make the Grinch 2018 stand out. It doesn't try to be everything for everyone, but it absolutely nails the one thing it aims for: heart. Rolling right out of everything we've already uncovered about what makes this movie tick. From its strengths and weaknesses to the heart beating under all that bright holiday glow, we can finally zoom all the way back to the core of the whole thing. The story itself, the pulse that keeps The Grinch 2018 alive. And the wild part is, even though everyone thinks they already know what this tale is about, this version adds its own flavor, its own rhythm, its own emotional logic, turning a simple Christmas fable into a surprisingly layered journey that hits deeper than you expect. At its core, the movie follows the Grinch, a furry green outsider holed up in a cave, perched over Whoville like a forgotten thought, someone who's convinced himself he hates Christmas not because it's truly awful, but because the joy he sees down in that glowing little town reminds him of everything he's been missing. You watch him wake up every day in this strange mix of routine and loneliness, with Max, his loyal, overworked, underpraised dog, being the only real connection he has left. The Grinch doesn't just avoid the world, he keeps a running emotional distance from it, pretending he's above the Who's celebrations, when deep down, those celebrations make him feel small, unwanted, and out of place. And every year, when Christmas rolls around, that emotional gap he's built inside himself turns into a canyon. But this year hits different. Whoville has decided to make Christmas 3 times bigger, louder, brighter, a full-on explosion of tinsel and joy, and that pushes the Grinch over the edge. He snaps, not in a wild, villainous outburst, but in this quiet, simmering way that feels so human you almost see yourself in it. That's when he decides he's done with it, done with the noise and the lights and the happiness he can't feel. So he hatches the plan we all know and love. He's going to steal Christmas. Not ruin it emotionally, no. He's literally going to take it away. Every present, every stocking, every tree, every twinkling bulb. Meanwhile, down in Whoville, Cindy Lou Who is on her own mission. And this is where the story really sharpens. She's not just some cute background kid. She's driven, kind, and genuinely worried about her mom, who works so hard she barely has time for herself. Cindy Lou wants to trap Santa, not to expose him or embarrass him, but to pull him aside and ask him for help, not for toys, not for gifts, but for support for her exhausted mom. Her storyline is simple but powerful, and the movie lets her innocence balance the Grinch's bitterness like a perfect counterweight. As the night of the heist creeps up, the Grinch transforms himself into a knockoff Santa. Max gets shoved into the role of a tired but determined reindeer, and they plunge down into Whoville with all the stealth of a holiday ninja mission gone morally sideways. And this entire sequence, him slithering through living rooms, sucking up ornaments like he's vacuuming joy, tiptoeing past sleeping Whos, is where the movie leans into the magic of the original story while still adding modern playfulness. But the real turning point comes when he meets Cindy Lou face to face. She thanks him, thinking he's Santa, for being someone who listens, someone who helps, someone who cares. And that tiny moment, that one unexpected kindness, opens a crack in the wall he's built around himself. It doesn't fix him instantly, but it plants a seed, and that seed shakes everything he thought he knew about people, about Christmas, and about himself. Then comes the scene everyone remembers. Christmas morning. He's stolen everything. Every scrap of holiday cheer is piled on his sleigh. He's waiting for the cries of misery, the meltdown he always assumed was coming. But instead, he hears singing, real singing, pure, joyful, unbroken. The Whos don't fall apart without presents. They come together stronger. And in that moment, the Grinch realizes that everything he believed about Christmas was wrong. It's not about gifts. It's not about decorations. It's about connection. Something he's been denying himself for years. That realization hits him so hard that it breaks him open. And that's when his heart grows, not magically, not randomly, but as a natural response to understanding something he had forgotten how to feel. He brings everything back. He apologizes. He steps out into the world he's feared for so long, shaky and awkward, and instead of pushing him away, the Whos embrace him like he's been part of them all along. And the moment Cindy Lou invites him to Christmas dinner, everything inside him shifts. He accepts. He shows up. He sits at that table, nervous, uncomfortable, trying not to mess things up. And for the first time, he's not alone. That's the heart of the story. A lonely outcast learning, one tiny step at a time, that he doesn't have to be alone. A kid discovering that kindness always reaches farther than she thinks. A town proving that joy isn't something you hold, it's something you share. And in this version of the tale, the Grinch doesn't just steal Christmas and give it back. He slowly, organically earns his place in a world he once pushed away. The movie wraps all of that into one glowing, heartfelt journey that blends humor, sorrow, redemption, charm, and warmth into a story that feels both timeless and fresh. And that's what the Grinch 2018 is really about. The long road from loneliness to belonging, lit by the simple, unstoppable power of kindness. Flowing right out of that deep dive into the heart of the story, it becomes impossible not to talk about the faces or voices that bring this world to life. Because The Grinch 2018 doesn't just rely on pretty animation or emotional storytelling. It leans heavily on a cast that knows exactly how to breathe personality into every moment, every joke, every whisper of vulnerability. And once you look at who's behind these characters, everything suddenly clicks like, oh, that's why this version feels the way it does. At the center of it all is the Grinch himself, voiced with this perfect blend of sarcasm, exhaustion, and buried heartbreak by Benedict Cumberbatch, who doesn't go for the wild, manic energy that some earlier versions leaned on. Instead, he keeps the character controlled, simmering, always holding just a little back, like someone who's been disappointed one too many times and decided that shutting down emotionally is easier than risking even one more ounce of hurt. His performance gives the Grinch a quieter intensity, something more human and lived in, and that choice is a huge part of why the character feels not just hilarious, but genuinely relatable. You hear the loneliness under the snark, the hesitation under the grumpiness, and that tiny trembling spark of hope he's tried so hard to bury. Then there's Cindy Lou Who, voiced with this wide-open sincerity and warm innocence by Cameron Seeley. She's the emotional counterweight to the Grinch, pure-hearted without being cheesy, determined without being bratty, and full of this natural kid energy that makes her feel real rather than cartoonishly perfect. The way she speaks, the way she pushes forward with her little mission to help her mom, it grounds the movie in something incredibly sweet, the kind of sweetness that doesn't feel forced but feels like something you'd see from a kid who genuinely thinks the world can be better if someone just tries. And of course, you've got Max, the Grinch's ride-or-die dog, who doesn't talk but definitely communicates. He's basically the emotional glue holding the Grinch's entire life together. Cooking, cleaning, carrying, pulling, comforting. And the animators give him this gentle loyalty that practically radiates off the screen. Even without a voice actor giving him lines, Max ends up feeling more expressive than half the human characters in some live-action films. The narrator of the whole story adds another layer of personality. Pharrell Williams. His voice has this smooth warmth to it, this easygoing rhythm, and instead of sounding like an old-school storyteller reading from a giant book, he sounds like a friend leaning next to you saying, "Yo, here's what really went down." That modern tone is what helps the film feel fresh and not just a retelling of something we've all heard 100 times. Then we meet Donna Who, Cindy Lou's mom, voiced with calm strength and tired gentleness by Rashida Jones. Her character isn't flashy, but she feels real in the way only a busy single parent can, juggling work, kids, obligations, and still somehow managing to keep the holiday spirit alive. That authenticity gives Cindy Lou's mission emotional weight, because you can feel how much she loves her mom and wants to help her in a way a kid actually would. We also get Bricklebaum, the overly friendly, overly festive neighbor who thinks the Grinch is his best friend, brought to life by Kenan Thompson, who pours this bright, unstoppable cheer into the character. Bricklebaum becomes one of the funniest pieces of the story because his positivity is so strong that even the Grinch, king of antisocial behavior, can't figure out how to shut it down. And swirling around them is the community of Whoville, each character, from the mayor to the choir members to the background families, voiced with layers of warmth and life that make the entire town feel bustling, alive, and emotionally connected. What makes this cast special is how perfectly balanced it is. No one feels overplayed. No one tries to steal the spotlight. Everyone leans into the tone the film is going for, softer humor, emotional sincerity, and moments that breathe instead of explode. It turns the town into a real community, the Grinch into a layered protagonist, Cindy Lou into a genuine spark of hope, and Max into the most patient dog ever animated. And that's the magic of the characters and the voices behind them. Together, they create a world that feels lived in, a story that feels emotionally honest, and a holiday movie that hits deeper than you expect. All because every personality on screen is built with care, warmth, and a voice that feels like it was chosen not just to perform, but to carry the heart of the story itself. Rolling forward from the world of characters and voices that shape every beat of this story, it becomes almost unavoidable to dive into the deeper layers that sit beneath all the bright colors and snowy rooftops, because The Grinch 2018 isn't just a cute Christmas tale. It's basically a soft, glitter-wrapped therapy session disguised as a family movie, packed with themes and messages that sneak up on you while you're laughing at Max getting dragged through another one of the Grinch's overly complicated gadgets. And the wild thing is, these themes hit even harder in this version because the movie takes its time. It lets the emotions land, and it presents everything in such a down-to-earth way that you almost forget you're watching a story about a green cave-dwelling creature with a heart problem. First off, the biggest, loudest theme, yet delivered in the quietest, gentlest way, is loneliness. The Grinch isn't mean because he was born cranky or because he's some chaos-loving anti-Christmas troll. No, he's lonely, deeply, painfully lonely. And the film makes that point loud without ever shouting it. You see it in the silence of his cave, in how Max is literally the only one he talks to, in how he walks through Whoville pretending not to care about being part of anything. And through that loneliness, the movie taps into a second theme: the way people build emotional armor. The Grinch acts miserable because it's easier than admitting he's hurting. That's real. It's relatable. It hits in a way a lot of animated movies never even attempt. Right behind that comes a theme about perspective, how your view of the world can twist itself into something unrecognizable when you're carrying old pain. The Grinch genuinely believes the Who celebrate Christmas to show off, to be loud, to rub their happiness in his face. But none of that is true. His bitterness is a filter, not a fact. And the film slowly tears that filter away until he's finally able to see the world for what it truly is, full of people who weren't trying to shut him out. He was keeping himself away. Then there's Cindy Lou, who brings in this beautiful theme of compassion without agenda. She doesn't want gifts, fame, or anything big for herself. She just wants her mom to have support and peace. That's such a refreshing message for a kid character. Her kindness isn't loud or performative. It's focused, genuine, something the Grinch desperately needs without even knowing it. And the way her kindness affects him? That leads straight into one of the film's most powerful themes, the idea that one small moment of warmth can change someone's entire life. Cindy Lou doesn't say much, but that tiny conversation she has with Santa, really the Grinch in disguise, hits him like a lightning bolt because it's the first time in who knows how long that someone has spoken to him with pure, unconditional sincerity. Another huge theme is the movie's take on Christmas itself. It pushes back against the commercial overload, the obsession with presents, the expectation that holidays need to be perfect. When the Who's come together and sing, even after everything is stolen, the film drives home its biggest moral. Christmas isn't a thing you can hold or buy. It's something you create with people. It's connection, not consumption. And that message resonates even harder today, when it's easy to get caught up in everything except the actual meaning of the holiday. The story also weaves in a message about redemption, not in a flashy, big speech and instant forgiveness kind of way, but in this grounded, almost fragile way. The Grinch doesn't become a better person overnight. His heart doesn't grow because of magic. It grows because he allows himself to feel again. His apology isn't perfect, it's not poetic, but it's honest. And that honesty is enough. The film says you don't have to come back flawless. You just have to come back with sincerity. And finally, running through every piece of the film is this overarching theme of belonging. The Grinch spends most of his life convinced he's an outsider, but the truth is, he never had to be. Whoville wasn't rejecting him, he was rejecting himself. And when he finally steps out of his cave emotionally, not just physically, the world doesn't push him away. It welcomes him. That's a message a lot of people carry with them long after the credits roll. Sometimes, the world is far more willing to love you than you think. Altogether, these themes turn The Grinch 2018 into so much more than a holiday flick. It becomes a story about healing, about perspective, about the quiet power of kindness, about the courage it takes to admit you want to be part of something, and the incredible transformation that happens when you let people in. And that's why this version hits on another level. It doesn't just retell a classic, it reaches into the emotional corners of the original story and shines a warm light there, reminding you that even the coldest heart usually started out warm, and with the right moment, the right connection, it can be warm again. Carrying forward from those deeper themes, the loneliness, the compassion, the quiet healing, you start to notice something even more powerful happening under the surface of The Grinch 2018. The relationships between these characters don't just sit there as background pieces. They shift, stretch, warm up, and grow in ways that practically guide the entire emotional rhythm of the movie. And honestly, the way those relationships evolve is what gives the story its heartbeat. Because without them, the Grinch's transformation would feel flat, rushed, or forced. But instead, every connection he forms acts like a little crack in that emotional armor he's been dragging around for years. Let's start with the one relationship people tend to overlook, but it might be the most important one, his bond with Max. When we meet them, it feels like a classic, grumpy boss, loyal sidekick dynamic, with the Grinch barking orders and Max quietly doing everything from cooking breakfast to hauling him around like a furry Uber. But as the story unfolds, you start noticing things. The Grinch softening, Max nudging him toward kindness, little non-verbal moments where their friendship shows through. Max isn't just a pet. He's the one anchor the Grinch has left in the world, the only creature he lets close, and that tiny spark of loyalty becomes the foundation for every other relationship the Grinch eventually builds. Then there's the slow burn shift between the Grinch and Whoville as a whole. In the beginning, that relationship is basically non-existent. He avoids them like they're radioactive. Every time he steps into town, he's tense, irritated, on edge. But what's interesting is that the Whos themselves aren't hostile. They're kind, welcoming, just oblivious to how much he's hurting. They treat him like a neighbor who happens to be having a bad decade. And because they don't fight his negativity with negativity, that softens him. Not immediately, not loudly, but gradually, like water wearing down stone. The relationship that changes the story the most, though, is the one between the Grinch and Cindy Lou Who. At first, They're basically from two different emotional planets. He's shut down and cynical. She's energetic and empathetic. But the moment they finally cross paths, when she mistakes him for Santa and pours her heart out, it's like something that's been locked inside him for years suddenly stirs. She doesn't fear him, doesn't judge him, doesn't treat him like a monster. She treats him like a person who cares. And because her intentions are so pure, so sincere, it throws him off in the best way. Their relationship becomes the spark that sets his entire emotional arc on fire. And even though they only share a few scenes, every one of those scenes hits like a turning point. Cindy Lou isn't trying to fix him, but by just being kind, she gives him the one thing he's been starving for, a moment of human connection without fear or expectation. The Grinch's relationship with Donna Who evolves in a quieter way, tied closely to his bond with Cindy Lou. At first, he sees her the same way he sees the rest of Whoville. Too cheerful, too busy, too wrapped up in a holiday madness. But once he finally understands Cindy Lou's intentions, he starts to see Donna not just as one of the Whos, but as a single mom doing her absolute best. And that shifts something inside him, because he knows what it feels like to carry everything on your back alone. By the time he sits at their Christmas table at the end, the relationship between him and the whole family becomes this symbol of everything he's gained. It's quiet, warm, and incredibly human. Even Bricklebaum, Whoville's walking ball of sunshine, has a place in the Grinch's emotional journey. At first, the Grinch can't stand him. Bricklebaum is everything he's not. Cheerful, friendly, loud, socially fearless. But instead of mocking or avoiding the Grinch, Bricklebaum showers him with kindness he clearly doesn't know how to handle. And the beauty is, Bricklebaum doesn't change at all. The Grinch does. Bricklebaum becomes the kind of person who proves that sometimes kindness really is unstoppable, even when aimed at someone who refuses to accept it. And all these evolving relationships come crashing together in the final act, when the Grinch returns everything he stole and steps into Whoville not as an outsider looking in, but as someone willing, finally, to try. The Whos don't interrogate him, don't punish him, don't treat him like the villain he thinks he is. Instead, they welcome him with open arms. And that moment at the dinner table, where the Grinch quietly admits that he didn't just steal Christmas, he stole it because he didn't know how to be part of it. That moment is the emotional payoff for every relationship he's slowly, awkwardly, painfully learned to build. So by the end of the film, the Grinch isn't redeemed because he changed overnight. He's redeemed because he learned how to reconnect with Max, with Whoville, with Cindy Lou, and most importantly, with the version of himself that had been locked away for far too long. That's what gives the story its true power. The relationships evolve in messy human ways, and because of that, the Grinch evolves right alongside them. And riding that wave of emotional evolution, it becomes impossible not to dive into how the Grinch 2018 handles its character development, especially when the entire story basically lives or dies on how believable, relatable, and compelling the Grinch himself turns out to be. What makes the whole thing hit so hard is that the film doesn't just flip a switch and turn him from bitter to joyful. It lets us sit with him, walk through his memories, feel his loneliness, and understand why he became the way he is. His development isn't rushed, it's layered, slow-burning, and honestly way more human than you'd expect from a fuzzy green creature who lives in a cave. The movie starts by showing us his daily life, not the cartoonishly evil, I hate Christmas because I'm evil vibe, but this deeply isolated existence where every little routine he has is shaped by hurt he's never dealt with. His grumpiness isn't just a personality trait, it's armor. It's a defense mechanism that he's worn for so long he doesn't even realize he built it. Every time he pushes away Whoville, every time he hides behind sarcasm, every time he rolls his eyes at the joy around him, the film lets you feel the echo of old wounds underneath those reactions. And that's where the character development becomes genius. Instead of telling us why he's like this, the movie shows it. We see the childhood flashbacks, not exaggerated trauma, not melodramatic heartbreak, just simple, cold neglect that shaped how he sees the world. He wasn't born a hater. He learned that Christmas meant loneliness. He learned that joy was something other people got to have. So when the world shines brightly, he feels even darker by comparison. And right there is the hook that makes him a compelling protagonist. He's not just someone trying to ruin a holiday. He's someone trying to protect himself from a pain he never outgrew. But what really makes his arc stand out is how subtle the shift is. You see cracks in his walls long before he ever admits they're there. A moment of softness toward Max. A flash of confusion when Cindy Lou shows kindness where he expected annoyance. A tiny hesitation when he sees the Whos celebrate with so much heart. The film doesn't drag you toward his transformation. It lets you witness it happening almost against his own will. He doesn't wake up one day wanting to be better. He wakes up one day realizing the world isn't as cold as he thought. And that realization terrifies him. Yet he leans into it anyway, step by awkward step, and that struggle, that right there, is what makes him compelling. He's flawed, he's stubborn, he's scared, but he's trying. His growth is never perfect, never clean, never heroic in a grand way. It's messy, it's hesitant, it's clumsy, and that's why it feels real. The Grinch doesn't become this cheerful, singing icon overnight. His heart grows 3 sizes only after he confronts the truth he's been avoiding, that he wanted connection all along, that he wasn't pushed out. He pulled away because he thought nobody wanted him. And once that realization hits him, it changes everything. It's not the stealing of Christmas that defines his story. It's the giving it back. It's the apology. It's the courage it takes for him to step out of his comfort zone and show the Whos face to face that he's ready to change. When he sits at that dinner table, he isn't magically healed. He's just finally letting himself belong somewhere. And what makes him so compelling isn't that he becomes perfect. It's that he becomes honest. Honest with the Whos, honest with Cindy Lou, honest with Max, and most importantly, honest with himself. That raw vulnerability is something you don't expect from the Grinch, but in the 2018 version, it's exactly what turns him from a classic Christmas villain into one of the most relatable animated characters of the last decade. In the end, his development isn't about becoming someone new. It's about rediscovering the part of himself he buried away. And watching that unfold is what keeps you glued to the story, wondering not just what he'll do next, but who he'll become because of it. Keeping that momentum rolling, it's impossible not to slide straight into the visual side of The Grinch 2018. Because honestly, the movie doesn't just tell its story through character development. It paints it, frames it, breathes it into every corner of Whoville and every shadow clinging to the icy cliffs of Mount Crumpet. The moment you start looking at the film through the lens of animation and cinematography, you realize just how much of its personality comes from the way it looks, the way it moves, the way it feels on screen. The whole visual style is like someone took the classic Dr. Seuss illustrations, cranked the detail meter up to 1,000, and then polished every surface until it glowed like a Christmas ornament. It's bright, it's whimsical, it's playful, but it's also surprisingly grounded. Clean lines, soft textures, that signature illumination charm that makes everything look like it exists in this perfect little bubble of holiday magic. What really hits you first is the color palette. Whoville is practically bursting with warmth. Like every street, every house, every decoration is dipped in cinnamon, sprinkled with sugar, and wrapped in gold foil. It's not just festive, it's almost overwhelmingly cozy, the kind of place you want to crawl into when real life gets too cold. And that warm saturation doesn't just look pretty, it plays against the Grinch's world perfectly. His lair feels cold, muted, all stone and shadows, with lighting that always hits that sweet spot between gloomy and oddly comfortable, like he built a home that matches his state of mind. Functional, isolated, but still a little soft around the edges, because deep down, he's not as harsh as he pretends to be. The contrast between these two worlds is its own kind of storytelling. Whoville glows, the Grinch's cave absorbs light. Whoville has curves, spirals, and swirls. Mount Crumpet is jagged and sharp. Whoville feels alive. The Grinch's space feels paused. But as the story moves forward, just like his character arc, you start seeing his environment change too. More warmth, more humor, more softness slipping into his scenes, especially as he starts interacting with characters who pull him toward something brighter. Then there's the animation itself. Man, Illumination went wild with the detail. They made the Grinch's fur so soft and expressive that it practically becomes its own character. The way it moves when he sneaks around, when he panics, when he's irritated, when he's pretending to be unfazed, it's all intentional, all tied to his emotions, almost like the animators were using his fur as an extra layer of performance. Same with Max. That dog has more personality through subtle animation than most live-action characters do through entire monologues. And the city shots. This is where the cinematography takes center stage. The sweeping aerial shots of Whoville aren't just flashy. They're designed to show you how big and interconnected everything is, which makes the Grinch's isolation feel even deeper. The camera glides, swoops, twists, giving the world this sense of motion and energy that reflects how lively the Whos are. Meanwhile, when the focus is on the Grinch, the shots tighten, the angles sharpen, the movement slows down. It isolates him visually before the story ever explains why he feels disconnected. That's cinematography doing storytelling without a single word spoken. And as the movie reaches its big emotional peak, even the lighting shifts. Whoville's glow feels like it reaches up the mountain for the first time, and the Grinch's world, once so dark and cold, starts reflecting that color, that joy, that warmth he tried so hard to hide from. The whole film is a masterclass in using visual tone to reflect emotional tone. It's this perfect blend of cartoon looseness and cinematic precision. You get those silly, squishy animation moments that kids love, but you also get breathtaking landscapes, textured lighting, and smooth, dynamic camera work that make the world feel cinematic instead of just animated. Basically, if the story is the heart of the movie, the visuals are the pulse. Steady, intentional, and constantly reinforcing the emotional beats the characters are going through. It looks magical, not because it's trying to look kid-friendly, but because it's trying to look alive. And it absolutely succeeds. And sliding right from the film's visuals into its soundscape feels natural, because once you've soaked in the colors and the motion, the very next thing that grabs you, sometimes without you even realizing it, is the music. The Grinch, 2018, doesn't just use its soundtrack as background decoration, it uses it like emotional fuel, like the invisible thread stitching together everything the characters feel, everything the story builds toward, everything the audience is meant to absorb. The score was composed by Danny Elfman, a guy practically synonymous with whimsical weirdness and heart-tugging warmth. And you can hear his fingerprints all over the entire movie. It's like he looked at this fuzzy green creature and said, "All right, I know exactly what you sound like," and then crafted music that's mischievous, dramatic, playful, and emotional all at once. What makes the soundtrack feel so special is the way it bounces between tones without ever feeling messy. When the Grinch is scheming, the music dips into these sneaky, slithering melodies, little rhythmic quirks, plucks, and tiptoeing phrases that match the exact way he moves, like the orchestra is sneaking around alongside him. Then, whenever the story shifts to Whoville, everything blossoms. Bells, choral touches, bright brass, warm strings. It's the sound of holiday cheer exploding out of every speaker, and that contrast isn't random at all. It mirrors the emotional divide the whole film revolves around. The Grinch gets shadows, low notes, and quiet mischief. The Whos get joy, warmth, and glowing harmony. This musical push and pull makes their worlds feel even more different, and that difference builds tension in the gentlest, most charming way possible. What Elfman also nails is the sense of scale. He can take something as simple as the Grinch walking through his cave and turn it into a mini character study just through the music shaping the mood. Soft, uncertain, guarded. But then when the Grinch is pulling off his big heist, the score goes huge, almost theatrical, ramping up into full festive chaos. It sounds fun, but also feels like this giant emotional leap, like the music is saying, this guy's entire life is about to change and he doesn't even realize it yet. And you can't talk about the movie's music without mentioning the vocals and updated takes on the classic "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch." Instead of leaning on nostalgia alone, the film remixes the idea, modern, stylish, a little punchy, giving the Grinch a fresh sound that fits the updated animation without abandoning the soul of the original. It's recognizable, but new, familiar, but fun. And this blend is exactly what the movie itself does with Seuss's story. So the soundtrack becomes a reflection of the film's whole mission. Even the little cues under the emotional scenes are doing work. Whenever the Grinch starts feeling that tug in his chest, those first cracks in his icy shell, the music softens, warms up slowly, like it's tiptoeing toward hope. And when the story finally reaches that iconic moment where the Grinch's heart grows, Elfman doesn't hold back. Everything swells. You get that huge, warm, glowing orchestral wave that feels like standing in front of a fireplace after being out in the cold too long. It's not subtle, but it's not meant to be. It's meant to hit you. It's meant to wrap around you like a hug and whisper, "Yeah, he's changed. For real." By the end, the music becomes the emotional glue that bonds the Grinch to Whoville, turning their once contrasting soundscapes into one unified, joyful anthem. And that's the thing. The soundtrack isn't just there to decorate scenes. It tells the story alongside the visuals, amplifying every laugh, every moment of loneliness, every spark of change. It gives the Grinch a voice even when he's silent. It gives Whoville its heartbeat, and it makes the whole movie feel like it's not just being watched, it's being felt. Rolling straight out of that musical wave that carries the whole film, it's almost impossible not to wonder how all of this, those visuals, that energy, that updated take on a classic, landed with the people who matter most. The viewers sitting in the dark with popcorn in hand, and the critics with their sharpened pencils waiting to compare it to every Grinch that came before. And honestly, the story of the Grinch 2018's reception is just as interesting as anything happening on screen, because it shows how a movie can hit different audiences in different ways while still planting its flag as a holiday staple. Now, the critics, they were split like a candy cane snapped in two. Some praised the charm, the soft-hearted tone, the visual glow-up that illumination poured into every frame, saying it was warm, sweet, and perfect for families who wanted a lighter, friendlier spin on the Grinch. But others felt it played things a little too safe, sanding down the sharper edges of Dr. Seuss's original mischief and leaning more into cute than cutting. To them, it wasn't bold enough or different enough to dethrone the classics. And honestly, that's fair, because this version wasn't trying to out-grump the classic cartoon or out-weird the live-action Jim Carrey version. It carved out its own lane. But the audience? They showed up in full holiday force. Families loved it, kids adored it, and the box office absolutely erupted. It became the go-to family movie of that season, the kind parents rewatched with their kids the next year, because it was colorful, cozy, and easy to fall into without any rough edges. And that's where The Grinch 2018 really made its mark, not necessarily by blowing critics' minds, but by becoming woven into the yearly holiday rotation for millions of households. The kind of movie you throw on when you're decorating the tree, wrapping gifts, sipping cocoa, or just trying to grab a little warmth when December feels too busy. Did it become a cult classic? Not exactly in the underground hidden gem sense. It became something more mainstream, what you could call a seasonal classic. The kind of film people return to every Christmas because it blends nostalgia with modern comfort. It didn't spark intense debates, but it didn't need to. It found its home as reliable holiday comfort food, smooth and sweet. And what's wild is how it ended up bridging generations. Kids connect with the energy, the humor, the colors. Adults connect with the softened but still meaningful character arc. And grandparents love it because it feels gentle, like the story they grew up with, but with enough new personality to feel fresh. The 2018 version may not have redefined Seuss's world or shaken the culture the way older versions did, but it also didn't fade away. Instead, it nestled itself right into the holiday lineup like it always belonged there. Each year, it climbs the streaming charts again, becoming one of those movies people casually watch without even needing to think about it. So in the end, its real legacy isn't being the best Grinch or the most daring reimagining. It's being the warm, visually stunning, musically rich Christmas movie that families just keep coming back to year after year. And honestly, how many movies get to say that? Flowing right out of how the world embraced this movie every holiday season, you start to realize that part of the magic behind The Grinch 2018 isn't just what ended up on the screen. It's the wild, meticulous, surprisingly ambitious process that brought it to life in the first place. Because this thing wasn't thrown together like some quick Christmas special. No, this was a full-blown production machine roaring to life under a studio that had already mastered the art of bright, bouncy, unforgettable animation. This version of the story was crafted by Illumination, the same crew behind Despicable Me, The Secret Life of Pets, and Sing